3. Really? How come any? No. Okay. Before we start, does anybody have an urgent plane ride to catch back? So do we need to finish at 3 exactly, or can we run for 1 full hour till 3:10? 1 full hour, right? Yeah, why not? Everyone seems happy with that. Yeah. Do you have a flight to catch, Ramzan? Okay. Well, I guess we've got 1 hour, right? So let's see when we actually get started. So when are we going to start? We can start now? Yeah, start. Okay, welcome everybody to this session on TV plus the augmented newsroom. There are a few sessions going on right now, but this particular session is going to focus on new and awesome production tools, right? I like that American word, often pronounced awesome, but we'll try and say awesome in this room right now. And what we're going to try and talk about are the capabilities of the technology. So not the technology itself, not how it's architected or designed or how the software is engineered, but how we use those technologies in our day-to-day lives. And, you know, there are some familiar faces around the room and some not so familiar, so I'm going to introduce them after I briefly introduce myself. So I'm Richard Bentley, and I work full-time for Al Jazeera. I've been with Al Jazeera for 4 years and 2 months and 2 days and about 15 seconds. And you know, I have the great pleasure of working with all the departments at Al Jazeera to help design workflows and integration points between all the different softwares and all the different people. Sitting to my right is Ramzan Al-Naimi, who's Director of Network Creative for Al Jazeera. Welcome for joining us, Ramzan. And next to him is Michel Jensen, or Michel Jensen, from TV2 in Denmark. And he's the Head of Technical and Production Facilities, I guess we could say, for TV2. Then we have Regis Andre from Avid. And Regis is the Senior Director of Product Management for Avid. If anyone here has used the Avid Interplay products or Media Composer, then Regis has got a lot to do with how they work and how they work with our workflows. Next to him, we have Ben Silva, who's Senior Vice President of Global Video Solutions for Huawei. And he's got some great stories to tell us about workflows in Hollywood, and we're working with James Cameron and the likes. And on the end there, we have Adobe, and representing Adobe, we have David McGavran, is that the correct pronunciation? Who's Director of Engineering at Adobe for video and audio products. So I'm personally excited to have both Avid and Adobe in the same room at the same time, which isn't very common these days. Usually, you know, they're on separate booths at NAB or IBC, but you know, one of the great stories that they both have to tell is how they now play well together and how their solutions integrate and work well. I'm just lifting up the mic for you guys. So, if I may, I'd like to start with you, Ramzan. You know, and you and I had a bit of a discussion earlier on, and you have a very creative story to tell from your department in particular. I'm going to pop my specs on for a second because I've got my cue sheet here, right here. And you know, one of the things, and we'll talk about this in more detail later on, is how Al Jazeera works in partnership with the vendors rather than a vendor coming and saying, here's a solution, go and use it, right? And us figuring out a way to make the best out of that. So maybe you could talk a little bit to those partnerships, please, Ramzan.
It's mute. So the story behind it, that it's when we work with the companies as a partners, when we create this partnership, this is where we could find a solution, where we could find a space to develop, a space to create something different and unique. I think one of the things that I could mention is our relationship, no doubt, about Avid and Adobe and Fizzarti and many of the major companies who's working in media industry. But I will mention our story with Fizzarti as example. So when we work with Fizzarti, normally Fizzarti, they have the system and they have the platform for on-air graphics, but how we develop the relationship with them, that we consider the newsroom production as something vital, something very important. And we thought about, we have to develop a different approach for the newsroom production. So we work together with Vizoti and other vendors. I will mention Vizoti as one of the examples, and we can talk about the other example. We develop a plugin using the VizRT to make sure that the journalist can create not only the templates, but even we integrated with the other search engines. So today we want to create a template about a specific story, about election, about coverage. You just need to write the first word, then it's similar to the Google things, that it will generate a lot of search using the metadata from our database, then it created the main template that related to the subject you want. So it's not anymore like you select the template, writing the headline, writing the content, choosing the image, searching where is the image. So we reduce that time. As one example is between, I can assume within 10 minutes to just seconds. That is one of the things that we enhance the workflow with the newsroom. And from this perspective, we thought about, so what is the next level? Is this what we're looking for? Is this is our target? Is this is exactly what we aim for? No. That only was the beginning. And then we started talking about using the artificial intelligence and using the machine learning to do something better. So one of the, I think, interesting project we are working on is how we could create a platform that help the newsroom plan for the upcoming events and create the references and the stories related to these events. Not only this, it's gonna create the template, the graphics related to every event. So the designer only gonna do the visibility of the design that being created, and the journalist who want to gonna make sure about the content being written, the content being selected, being gathered from the different sources and the database from Al Jazeera. That will save, I'm talking literally from 14 days to just a 1 day production. That under the testing, and hopefully we can launch it soon. That is not to replace human. I just want to be very clear about it, because this is something very sensitive when I study the AI. I believe using AI to enhance the workflow, using the technology to make the job much easier, to make the job much better for the people who's working behind that jobs, either a journalist, either a designer. So utilizing this technology, utilizing this kind of tools to make the job, the pipeline of the production is much better and easier. This is the key for succeed. And we only achieve that because we are working in a partnership with the companies, or we call it the vendors, if we can call it.
And I think you're exactly right, and that's what many of the specialists who've been here talking about artificial intelligence and all of its permutations, whether it be machine learning or some other form of algorithm, is that we want to augment the end user experience, not replace the end user, but to boost, to take away mundane tasks. And you mentioned partnerships and relationships with vendors, and recently Al Jazeera partnered with Microsoft. And we also know that Avid did exactly the same thing. So how important is it for the likes of Avid to partner with people like Microsoft these days, and why are you doing it in particular?
That's a great question. Tom just did a nice, great talk earlier talking about the cloud and why people are going to the cloud. And one of the things that Avid was looking at is, okay, how are we going to go to the cloud? It's a journey. It's not going to be a switch we're going to turn on one day and we're all of a sudden in the cloud. So Avid went through an RFP process and tried to figure out which was the best partner to work with to get to a cloud. And Microsoft was very exciting to us for many reasons. One, of course, they have the technology. Not only just the cloud bits, but they have also cognitive services and much more technology that we can use, transcoding in the cloud, things like this. But they also had these great capabilities to have also hybrid solution, where not only you can use the cloud, but you can also use Azure Stack, for instance, on premise. So you're not tied to just be cloud or not cloud. You can do both at the same time. And we at Avid believe strongly that this is the way to go right now. Nobody's going to just go fully on the cloud. So having a way to be able to have on-prem system with capabilities and then to extend those capabilities using the cloud for shared library content, for instance, or use some automation is a great solution.
In the past, large vendors like the big A's in the room and others have been accused of being a closed ecosystem. You know, their products weren't open to end consumers or other companies, let's say, tinkering with it under the hood, right? But now, you know, well, for some time now, Avid and Adobe and other vendors have done this kind of opening up of their ecosystems. And, you know, Avid's working on, or, you know, ready to release the platform, right? And, you know, the platform enables, you know, both creatives and engineers to do amazing things. But something that you and I spoke about earlier on was the ability for customers like Al Jazeera to harness the power of the platform from a programmatic point of view and to develop our own tools within your solution.
But that's something that is dear to me is when I present the Avid platform, the Media Central platform to customers or partners, I don't present it as just a product. The whole idea of a platform is not only to be able to offer solutions and tools and capabilities, but also to be a development platform. So our partners can now go and connect through our APIs, through that platform to build their own solution. I have a customer in New York that used the platform, for instance, to run cognitive services integration with another cloud vendor. And they did that with our API. 2 days of a kid in a garage in New York just took our platform, being able to create a script that would just take media, send the proxies to the cloud, get the speech-to-text data back into our system, so now it's searchable and things like this. So it's really the idea to create an open platform so anyone can participate and get the better solution.
David, how is Adobe helping their customers to, you know, reduce tediousness in their workflows and make faster creative decisions? You know, you and I were speaking earlier about, for example, color grading or, say, content-aware work within Photoshop. You know, how can that help me speed up my workflow?
Yeah, so Adobe is all about, you know, the creative person. Pretty much everybody who sits behind an Adobe product is a creative and they're making creative decisions. And that's the center of everything we do. And for them to be able to increase their content velocity, they need to be creating more and more and more content as the world moves faster with all the media platforms. So we're really looking at ways with machine learning to increase that. And there's some really basic ones that everybody would expect. You know, how when you have video, do you create captions automatically or put the text in there? But there's some more complicated ones. So when you're doing color grading, if you're going to be doing color grading, you're going to want to know things about what's in the scene. You're going to want to know about whether there's a person in the scene or not, or a sky in the scene, because you're going to do a different grade based on that. And Photoshop's done a ton of this with content-aware fill. We had a sneak at Max where we showed the same kind of ability in video to be able to say, take a look at something, a brand or something that's not supposed to be in the shot, and just automatically remove it. So it's something you could do as a creative, but it's something that actually is just a lot of work and tediousness. So where do you find those opportunities in the workflows to really increase speed and allow the creative person to focus on really the creative decision making?
That's exactly one of the challenges we face at Al Jazeera. You know, we have thousands of hours worth of content in our archives and on our MAM systems, and we're working with Microsoft and other vendors at ways that we can enrich the metadata so we can find stuff faster, we can discover content quicker, and we can turn those news stories around much faster. We heard from the presenter this morning that she'd spent an hour looking through content to find one clip, and if she could go straight to that with one click, you know, how quickly could she create 2 or 3 news stories as opposed to one news story? Michael from TV2, you know, your story, I suppose, is a little bit less about AI. I mean, I know there are elements of it because I was lucky enough to listen into you talk earlier on today, so that's given me some new ideas. But you've been very much involved in automation of galleries and studios and production environments at TV2 in Denmark. Could you please tell the audience a little bit how that has impacted, say, existing workflows or some of the maybe perceived fear that operators had when this technology was implemented?
Yeah, I can, a lot. Actually, I would prefer to talk about AI because this is new and awesome production tools. And actually, we started in 2006 to automate the galleries. So I won't say it's new anymore. This is just something we do.
So for you, that's business as usual, right?
It is business as usual, yeah, definitely.
That's just the way that it is, and the organization has accepted that. And those who maybe were doing those jobs traditionally are now doing different jobs.
Right? You know, actually, no one was kicked out. And of course, everywhere you go, everybody says, oh, what about my job, you know? I remember one of the second very big installation I did for the main news channel. The head of news had a talk to all the staff and said, come on, we're going to automate, but no one is going to kicked out. Still, anyway, somebody was sitting in the corner crying. But what about my job? Nobody is going to be kicked out. We are just going to relocate you. Maybe we will find a more interesting job for you. The whole main idea is we want to produce more. We don't want cameramen in the studios. We want cameramen out in the fields for news gathering, etc., etc. So it's all about using your resources in a much better way. And quite interesting, I visited your TV station yesterday, and I love to come into galleries. So of course,
The English channel, or the Arabic channel?
English channel. So we saw both when I went to the gallery in the English channel, it's always nice to go to a gallery with all the much viewers and see what's going on. There was a woman in there, and the director obviously, and I asked him maybe a little bit. I asked it wrong because English is not my native language. So I asked, how many is directing in here? I'm the only one directing in here, she said. A little bit aggressive, but yeah, but I'm the only one directing in here. But then I have an assistant director, then I have a vision mixer, then I have somebody as graphic or whatever. But what it is for a director is really to take control of the show. And you don't have control in the show if you have so many people sitting around. You can say, okay, stand by, camera on, cut. And then have a reaction. The audio guy there's a microphone on, up to 0. Then somebody have to put graphic on. With automation, you can do it more accurately and you can have much nicer shows. And to be honestly, a news show is a choreography. It is the same every night. Opening shot, close, there. You have the big screen in the background, everything. It's not a creative process. It's more, a show you have to put on air, and it looks the same every night.
So you can enable the creativity in the storytelling instead of repetitive tasks in the newsroom.
Yeah.
Now, Ben, again, I've had opportunity to speak to many of these guys offline, and the stories they've told me, over breakfast and during the breaks are the ones I want to recount now because I think they're the most interesting ones, So everybody's seen the movie Minority Report, or most people have, where things are being moved around in virtual space. We were talking about David Cameron, sorry, not David Cameron, he's the politician, but James Cameron, right, working with Avatar and his latest movies right now. And one of the stories you were telling about was the way he was interacting with his technology via voice commands.
By three brothers. It's Jim, John, and Michael. And Jim's always been on the leading edge. He has the largest, stage in the world specifically for doing motion capture. So he's always on the leading edge. And so he really wanted to be able to use a Minority Report type interface for being able to create content. And to be able to work back and forth with his operation in China. So quite literally, I watch him actually talk, move that scene, roll it back 3 frames, and he literally talks to the machine and everything happens in real time. And it allows him to be free because his attitude was, I don't want to be tied down to any desktop. I just want to be able to sit there, look at the screen, and create. And that's what he does. So really, everyone gets concerned about AI and all these different things, but Jim was really specific. I want to use AI specifically to teach my machines how to do what I want them to do. And so to watch it and see him, it's like watching, somebody actually, conducting an orchestra. He's up there moving things around and talking to the content, and moving things and editing things, and he does it so fast, but he gets into a zone when he does it that as creators, because I started as an editor as well, as creators, to be able to get in that zone and not be coupled by having to move a mouse or looking on the screen or looking at clip lines and bins and everything else, it's pretty amazing to watch yourself being unshackled and unhandcuffed to be able to create content. And I think that's where the AI machine learning is coming in. Everyone's talking about AI and all these other kind of interesting places, but at the end of the day, I believe the most important thing is going to be, how does it make our life easier to create content? And take us away and take the handcuffs off and get us off the desk and get us immersed in what we're doing to create the content. The other thing he does brilliantly is in his motion capture stage, when he creates the environment, all of his cameras are virtual. Quite literally, there's a tripod and there's a circle where you can see the camera's supposed to be, but it's really not there. It's literally virtual. But then he looks on a screen and he can move around inside the environment 360 degrees. And he can zoom in and zoom out and do everything that he wants to do literally by voice command. And so it's pretty impressive. And I think as we move down this path of AI, I think it's a matter of us deciding how we want to use it to make our lives easier and to make it easier to create content and take the handcuffs off of all the things that cause us to, be delayed.
I want to tie you three gentlemen together again in a second, and then going to come back to Ramzan. But another thing that I found really exciting is the way that this cloud technology enables us to push our content into storage that isn't on premises or could still be on premises, but access it from anywhere in the world, right? So at Al Jazeera historically, we've often ended up with hard drives with content on that sits on a producer's shelf. And if you went back 5 or 10 years and you spoke to any sports reporter and looked in the trunk of their car, you'd find tapes of football matches that they wanted to keep. That was their archive in the trunk of their car. And now we can push it somewhere else that we don't really, it automatically goes up somewhere. And then we can play that content from anywhere. And, what I want to be able to do is to stream or edit my HD or my 4K content on my laptop from a coffee shop, right? From Starbucks or from my hotel room. Regis, is that possible? How can I do that? And what tools do Avid provide that allow me to do that?
Yes, there are several possibilities right now. Some are using cloud technologies without really being in the cloud. Some others rely on the cloud, as Tom was saying earlier in the talk. The storage in the cloud is not necessarily up there yet to be as fast as needed to be able to stream 4K. But there are different solutions. At Avid right now, we do have two solutions. One of them is probably the best kept secret at Avid. Is called Media Composer Cloud Remote. And what it is really, it's a media composer that's sitting on your laptop right here, but it connects through a streaming engine to a server where the storage is. So that storage can be anywhere. We have lots of customers in the US, East Coast, West Coast. There's a great use case where I'm in LA, I want to edit the content in New York, just launch Media Composer, connect to the remote server, and all the media, all the frames get streamed in real time to my editing application. So that's one way to go, but it's still needs you to have the FIC application installed. If you want it to run from your cell phone or from your iPad without having anything to install, that's where VDI comes in, where now you can run Media Composer on a virtual machine. That virtual machine can be on-prem, could be in the cloud as well. And in that case, what you just need to do is to have a zero client or thin client. It could be your iPad, it could be anything, and you can now have access to the entire editing experience remotely without having anything installed on your machine. And we have more and more customers using this as well. A lot of shows like Frontline in the US is made like this. The editors are not anywhere near where the storage and the media are. They don't have anything installed on their machine.
And that's a great way to go, isn't it? One of the problems that many broadcasters have is upgrades of technology. You need to go to every single PC, reinstall the new software, and companies like Avid and Adobe and the rest of the guys out there are enabling us to do that through things like Adobe Creative Cloud, push updates of software and so on. Ramzan, how important is it to your team to be able to work, let's say remotely, or to access assets wherever they are? A lot of the assets many organizations have, like Al Jazeera or the BBC, tend to be, by their very nature, unstructured, right? So they stick in some kind of blob storage somewhere, and then we have to access that content, make sense of it, and use it anywhere. How important is that to us at Al Jazeera?
It is very important because I'll just give you a brief about how the creative division is structured. So we have a team in London, and we have a team in Washington, and we have a team in Qatar, in Doha. Mm-hmm. So using the material was really a crucial thing for us, and we need to make sure how we could utilize our resources, our materials where we are working abroad and we are working virtually most of the time when we create something. Exactly. So we started 3 years ago to restructuring and recreating the folder structure, and then created the metadata for the materials, and then we started to use the digital asset management concept where we could use the same resources, the same materials across Doha, London, and Washington, and San Francisco just weeks ago. The idea behind that, we need to make sure that we are not rebuilding the same scene, we're not rebuilding the same design again and again. We are not only saving the time, but we're managing the quality, we're managing the brand as well. So restructuring the way of sharing the data, sharing the material was one of the most important things for us. And when we work with the different vendors, there's the issues when, that we are having a VisRT scene, and then we have the Adobe files, and then we have a lot of materials, the musics, and all the stuff. working together and make sure we have a once integrated system was really something very hard, but we achieved that.
Yeah.
And now today, our team, they are using one material, using the same machine, whatever the templates. One of the things that in Al Jazeera Arabic, for example, they have a show in Washington, and the show being produced in Doha as a packaging or the graphics elements.
Yeah.
Then suddenly, within 3 hours, they decided to redesign the entire graphics because something changed for the episode. That time, if they don't have the access, if they don't have the same material, that's going to be a big issue for us. But they did it because we are unified our system. We unified our what we call the design language when it came to the structure of the files. That helped the team in Washington. You know, the time difference is a big issue as well.
Yeah,
So
of
they
course.
managed because they have one system. We unified the structure. They easy accessible, and then rebuild it within 10 to 15 minutes without creating any issue, because that is something we are always think about, and we are always ahead, because we need to make sure that we are even think about when there is something coming like a coverage on field and they want to create a graphics.
Yeah.
They should be يعني it's easy for them to have access to this material, and they create it on the spot, and even they push it for on air. It's something very important to restructure the way of the material being created and produced, but also had been going to be managed using either it's about the policies, no doubt, but the most important thing is the platform itself.
Yeah.
How open and how integrated with the other platform is something very important. And we found the support from every vendor we work with, and they are, as I said, they are our partners. We're always open to make sure their system is up to our requirements and our expectation.
And that's, that's one of the great changes we've seen in this industry is, as we mentioned a minute ago, many of the partners are now open to this kind of integration. And in the past, this kind of workflow wouldn't have been possible. We would have had to call a vendor and say, we want to do X, Y, Z. Can you help us do that? And now we can set our programming teams to solve those problems for us by the input of the likes of Ramzan driving the technical teams to be able to create solutions that work well for Al Jazeera. Let's go back to the machine learning again for a second. And I noticed that most of the people who are here weren't in the previous session. So I thought that the local election story that you told earlier was a very interesting one. Would you mind repeating that for this audience? Thank you, Michel.
We recently had the local elections in Denmark, and it's quite different from national elections, because for national elections, you know all the politicians, you know all their faces, you have seen them 100 times on your television or other devices. But for local elections, there are so many new faces. So the directors in the galleries, they start to come to me, can we make some posters with all the faces so we can recognize them when we have to put lower first on? I say, yes, of course we can do that, but you will have taped your gallery with posters of these faces. So I start to think about, what about face recognition? Could that work? So I asked a bit around, and actually Quest Germany, they came back and said, yes, we can do it. We can do it from live video with a latency not more than 3 seconds. We can put up the name, give you a suggestion. We're not going to put that name on air. You are going to put it on air yourself. It's right directly to iNews and to VSRT, and the lower third will come up and you can put it on air. And I will say that in the test, and in reality, maybe 98% of them were correct. And also the ability to say, okay, this is not this one because you had some choices. This is this one, and then the machine will remember it.
And correct its own mistakes.
It's very efficient.
And I guess that's how machine learning works, right? You give it enough data, and it begins to learn from the data you give it. I think a good joke I like is, a machine learning algorithm works into a restaurant, and the bartender says, what do you want to have to eat? And the machine learning algorithm says, I don't know, what's everybody else having, right? And it begins to learn. I thought it was funny anyway. So, one of the things that Ben and I were talking about earlier on, Ben liked that, right? Is if as a customer like Al Jazeera, you want to try out a new workflow or a new technology, traditionally you have to, reserve a big room like this, put in power, put in racks, install hardware, right? The forklift truck lift and shift it in, and test something out, right? And the only way you know it's going to work is that somebody else did it before you, right? Hopefully the hardware is going to be resilient. But if it doesn't work and you change your mind or you want to go down a different direction, you're kind of stuck, right? Or if you want to, for example, you want to do a production outside of your organization. You want to do something in London or a remote location. So what, advantages does cloud technology give us, and the ability to like spin up a new instance is often a term used within cloud. What does that mean to Huawei and your technology?
Well, I mean, essentially in the cloud, I mean, you can change and add new tools in minutes as opposed to really having to do a forklift upgrade. I mean, we view cloud very differently. And, it's interesting how this whole time we're hearing this, it seems like cloud is this thing that's actually coming. But in reality, I mean, this is not a commercial for Huawei. This is really 70% of the broadband infrastructure in the world we deployed. 80% of the mobile networks in the world we deployed. At any moment in time, we have 7 billion connected devices that we manage, petabytes of data per second, and clouds of epic proportion, number 2 in mobile. Well, when we take all of that technology and everything that we've learned from the cloud, all of that connectivity and all that speed, when we built the media cloud for Shenzhen Media Group, for example, I mean, it's all deployed. We had 400 delegates from around the world and different broadcasters come in to actually see how a true news and television production environment in the cloud really looks like. Where, we have WAN accelerated, where, the guys in the field can literally edit, like Avid was saying, anytime, anywhere. We have the integrations with VizRT, with Adobe, with everybody else, and we quite literally are already doing this. And I think the efficiencies of work are unbelievable. I mean, no more running between departments and all these other things. I mean, very much what he was saying. I mean, having thin clients and being able to edit anywhere. Being able to have, SDI and 3G where you can go 80 kilometers out and be able to send that data back, in SDI. I mean, so there's all kinds of things that actually are available today. It's not like the cloud is coming, it's already here. So, and anytime you want to spin up a new service, it takes minutes, not days, not weeks, not months. I mean, so you can try out new programming, you can try out all kinds of new things, and as new tools from Avid come out, and it's very easy to get those tools into the cloud and give access to the users to allow them to spend their time being creative, not wrestling with machines, not saying my hard drive's having a problem, my keyboard's not working, my mouse isn't working. The whole point of the cloud is to make your life easier, to keep you creating content and less time wrestling with your technology.
Now, if people think about traditional engineering, and yes, I am old enough to remember this, when I used to work for a broadcaster in Denmark, and the digibeta tape wasn't working properly, you'd call the engineering team, and they'll come with some Q-tips and clean the head on the tape player, right? So you can carry on transmitting. So engineering has moved along a long way since then, and we've seen a kind of merge between engineering and IT and workflow in our industry, right? And this is kind of for Regis and for Dave, right? At the end, is how much is user interface or UI and user experience important to the end user? Because as an engineer, you can build something, but it doesn't mean they're going to come. Let's start with you, Dave.
So it actually goes back, I think, to a little bit what you were talking about before as well, because when you're talking about people wanting to be able to create anywhere, there's two things that I think we missed in that conversation that Adobe finds very valuable. One is, if in journalism, it's really easy to give an example. If I'm out and I want to tell a story because something's happening around me and I have my phone with me, I want to be able to not just work by myself in that, I want to collaborate with everybody. Anybody who thinks they create a news story by themselves because they have video is missing a lot of it, right? You're going to have a Photoshop person giving you some graphics. You're going to have some motion graphics from the After Effects person. And these people are going to be around the world. So you need to be immediately able to collaborate with people around the world. And that content that we talk about isn't always in one location. So yes, it would be nice to be able to spin up a version of software that can talk to your MAM where it is and only use the media on the MAM where that MAM location is. You're going to be shooting something on your phone, maybe doing a voiceover on your phone, and having to mix it possibly with some stock content or also some footage that was shot in another bureau that someone else is doing. So you need to be able to mix the media wherever you are, edit it wherever you are, and collaborate with everybody else that's important to your production. And those two things, I think, make it, when you come back to user experience, if I'm sitting out there on my phone, I'm going to want to be able to use my phone the way my phone's been designed to use. I'm going to use it as a camera. I'm going to have the app installed that does the media access locally, and then it's going to collaborate with the rest of the workflow that is going on around me. So the last thing I'd want to do on my phone is spin up a virtual interface to a Windows product running somewhere else in a cloud, because that's not going to be the way the phone user is going to want to work. You want to design the user experience for where the person's working, on what device they're working on, and make it feel like they're in touch with it. So if you're on a touch device, you want to be able to manipulate it with your hands. You want to be able to talk to it. You want to be able to use all that technology.
Now, before I go to Regis, sometimes, if I look at the workflows at Al Jazeera, in particular, let's think about the media managers who get our content in and out of the system and manage it. One time they're using Media Composer, next they're using the MAM, next they're using, an Adobe product, then they're using S/S cards or compact flash cards, and a mixture of interfaces, and they have to have training on product X, interface Y. Isn't it about time that all of that was unified into one tool where if I just choose my role rather than my product, and then the system gives me the tools I need to do my job?
That's a very good point. I think Avid has been on the forefront of thin web-based application for a while with Media Central on the platform, and we just released in September a new version, if you want, of this. And one of the design goals of this user interface design, we had a stupid joke during development, was my mom, who's 80 years old, she can use Netflix and Amazon.com, so she should be able to use Cloud UX as well. And that was really the running joke in the development of the product. It was to make a product very, very easy to learn, and we used a lot of web paradigms and a lot of web and phone apps paradigms. So the application itself is like a desktop on an iPhone, for instance, on an Android device. You've got a bunch of apps, and you open the apps you want to use to do your job. So you have an app for logging, you have an app for editing. But we also start to blending apps together. There's no reason why, where you're publishing to social media, that you should not be able to edit what you're publishing to social media. So no need to go to a separate app. So we've done all that work, and I think just to go back across everything we just talked about, it's very easy with cloud and technologies to geek out and to forget the end users. And that's the thing, to me, that's very important. We need to focus on who's going to use the products at the end of the day. And I think what's great about all the latest technologies in the cloud and all that stuff, it gives us more time to refocus on you guys, on the users who are going to produce content. And the technology is being easier to deploy, to install, to upgrade. It just gives more time to focus again on the user experience. And I think that's the greatest thing that's happening right now is this.
And both Avid and Adobe have a kind of a stock footage or a collaboration area where content creators can upload their content and share it with other people who can either purchase it or make use of it for free, depending on the rights. And I know, Ramzan, your team has made integrations inside Al Jazeera between stock agencies. You've done some development yourself there. Would you mind telling us a little bit about that?
Our creative solution department, working with technology and other vendors like Getty Image and Shutterstock, I think we came to a point where we would like to utilize all these resources and all this data. Yeah. So we created kind of 2 stages of this project. So the first stage is, that the journalist or the designer, they are open 5 different websites to logging and searching for image like Shutterstock, Getty Image, and our internal resources agencies, stock image. Yes. So we work with the technology, and then we get the API from different vendors, and we created one search engine. We call it our Google search engine. So where there is nothing in the website. There's only a search field where you just write whatever you're looking for. Then it will gather every resources available and put it in front of you. And then when you click it, then you have to decide you want to push it for the visitor or you want to use it for something else. That is stage 1. Now our awesome things is coming is stage 2, where this kind of the storage of this image and footage, that will be our data for our designers to create the mood board, where if there is an election coming, the machine will decide what kind of mood board the designer should follow to create the branding for the coverage, based on the data metadata and based on the scanning of the content of the image. It's not replacing the creativity of the designer, but it will help him, because in the end, any designer, there is a behavior. If we understand the behavior, you can make sure how you utilize this technology. The behavior, he always search. The designer, he or she, searching for an imagery that could be inspiring for him. So this machine, based on the the practices and based on the learning and based on what we designed before, it's gonna help us create the mood board and suggest something for the designers to starting from. And that is not only saving time, but also using this technology to inspire the designers and the people who's working there, and utilize also what every single resources we have and data being stored there. So we just recreating or we just evolving the workflow we have and working not about revolution because it's already here.
Yeah.
The idea is when we should take the train to start the journey,
Yeah.
because the train is running, it's on the track. You have two choices, either to jump or you have to wait on the station.
Yeah.
That is, I make it just a simple way to describe this journey, that the revolution journey on technology.
And isn't it great that, at Al Jazeera we can take these iterative steps ourselves and put plans into action ourselves in partnership with many of the vendors.
Absolutely, yes.
Mika, how important is metadata to TV2? Because if you're trying to find something in your archive or something in your production environment, if it's only given a title, at best and a duration, how do you find this stuff? And how can we make life better?
Of course, metadata is the most important thing when you store things. And this is constantly, running back to the journalist and come on, write your tags and everything, and sometimes they forget, but we, just keep on, going to them and say, come on, it's very important because next time you're looking for this and you can never find anything. So of course, metadata is very, very important. And this is also a thing that we can start to look at for AI, what can AI do? What can it recognize of images? So you already have a part of the metadata.
I understand, yeah. I mean, in fact, one of the things that we're doing at Al Jazeera is taking a lot of our content from the MAM and pushing that up to providers like Microsoft and Google and IBM and Facebook and getting them to enrich video for us, right? So we're getting transcription services, we're getting scene recognition, we're getting sentiment, and we're able to for example, transcribe videos for producers, and it would used to sit and take 3 or 4 or 5 days transcribing an interview, and now we can do it for them within minutes, and at the same time we can provide them with a subtitle tool to use in the editing software. But getting that metadata in is the difficult part, right? If it's an end user who's having to sit and look at the video and describe what's happening, for example, certain actions, so-and-so person is shaking hands with somebody else, or Donald Trump trips on the steps getting out of the Air Force One, and you want to find that piece of video. Regis, how can machine learning or AI generally help us with that, and how is Avid working with, for example, cognitive services to help us to search content on your databases?
There's a lot of power in there. Someone at Avid Connect last year said, we all know media is king, but metadata is the queen. And that's definitely true, right? You need metadata. The thing that's very interesting nowadays is there's different type of technologies, and I think what's going to be great is, again, how we can harness the power of those technologies to do something smart. At Avid, we have our own phonetic indexing technology where we can index phonemes. So we can find clips which have the same audio sound bites, voice recognition. We can.
So that means if, for example, somebody says the word hockey puck in a sports event, I can type in that text and it will find me all instances of where somebody says that word, right?
Yes, and the technology, for instance, is based on phonetic recognition. So it doesn't care about the language. It's not speech to text. It's actually the opposite. So extremely, extremely accurate. So you can do a search. Now what you can imagine is we can also harness this plus connected services like face recognition. So now you're looking for Donald Trump, right? But you're looking for his face, so you want him to be in camera. So you find only when it's in camera. But in the sound, you want to hear maybe Obama and Syria. And you want the word Obama and Syria to be within 5 or 10 seconds of each other. So now you will find the one interview where Donald Trump is saying the word Obama and Syria within 5 or 10 seconds, so you know the context. You can very fine-tune your searches.
So I guess, there are several layers of metadata within any one clip, right? There's descriptive metadata, there's audio metadata, and the ability to search within all those strata of metadata becomes very important to journalists and producers and creatives in, instead of spending 90% of your time searching and 10% being creative, we want to turn that on its head, right? And be the other way around. What tools are Adobe bringing to the market that can help in that respect as well, please, David?
I think there's two things. One, when you look at external services like a Microsoft or an Amazon or an IBM Watson, I think it's the same thing I've seen across the industry in whole. Every time I go to a broadcaster, they're saying, I want to bring in this technology from this MAM vendor or this technology from this other provider. And every broadcaster has a different set of puzzles to bring together. So Adobe's always, from the beginning, said that we're going to work with everybody out there. So we have a very open development platform. And in fact, we developed an open metadata standard that's used all over the world, which is XMP. So we can work with any partner that anybody wants, and IBM's done this, and other people have done this, where you can embed the technology from these partners into the Adobe products directly. And then leveraging XMP, which is an open metadata standard, you can choose to go with Microsoft because that's the best video exists for this technology. Adobe's going to bring some technology in here, and IBM's going to have some technology there, and you can mix and match it openly across a standard metadata format, which is XMP. I think that's extremely powerful. But at the same point, that's one side of data. The other side of data is how do you use the data to create better content? And an example of this is if you're looking at an election data or some other conversations around data, you might want to create a graphic for your news broadcast that's showing polling data around the country. And you would use After Effects to go ahead and do that. So we're bringing actually another level of data into the picture, which is bringing your data into your animation package and use that data to automatically create graphics. So you can create one After Effects composition that leverages data to create polling information across the country, across the state. And then you just link it to your data source, and you can get infinite number of graphics automatically based on that data. And I think that just changes the whole scale that you can start using data to actually not only search for things, but create new content from all that data, whether it's a Twitter feed, a weather data, stock data, polling data, and then you can use the data to actually create new content. I think that's extremely powerful.
You know, we have to wrap up shortly, but I'm going to come to final thoughts in a second. You know, if I speak to, let's say, the cloud uninitiated and I ask them what cloud is, for them, they kind of say, well, doesn't it mean storing all of your content somewhere else? Right? Isn't it about taking all of your video files and putting them on somebody else's servers? Well, you know, that's just the tip of the iceberg for cloud, right? In fact, it doesn't even have to be any of the iceberg. You can keep all of your content stored locally, but still harness the power and the flexibility that the cloud gives you, right? We all use cloud services every day when we update our Facebook status or Twitter. We don't think about the back end of the engineering side. We just are interested in the user experience as a front end user of that service. And I think that's how, you know, you might describe the way that our industry is going. Ramzan, what are your final thoughts on that?
I think it's the uniqueness things on this approach is we should change our mindset, change mindset from the people who's working and change the mindset of the people who are going to implement it, and we can create not a change management, because what we need to create is something that we should be ready and for next level, even not for the thing that already exists. Yeah. The most important thing is to prepare for something to enhance the productivity, not just enhance the workflow. Because the most of the important thing is the productivity coming today with using all this technology and resources. That is the key. This is the most important thing.
Thank you, Ramzan. Michel, it's not about the technology, it's about the people, right?
Well, changes are very difficult, you know, and really as a human being, you don't want to change. If you ask around in your organization, are you willing to adapt? Everybody will say, yes, of course, I'm willing to adapt. But basically, people want to have it as it was yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah, so very much of what's happening is also about change management of people's ways of thinking as well. Yeah. Regis, please.
So I think we talked about the user interface. I think that's the big thing that we all need to focus more is how to make better tools for the end users at the end of the day. The technology is just here to serve it. The other thing we didn't touch base because we don't have enough time as well, but one of the great things with the cloud technologies and the AI is going now with all this archive content that you talked about. There's no reason why you can't continue to just add more metadata as new cognitive services comes online. Yeah. One day there's one that will give you the style of your haircut, for instance, right? Yeah. There's no reason you can't. So that's something we're working on with our shared library concept, where the archive is not a place where media go to die anymore. It just keeps getting better and better as it stays there, because we can continue to add and add more metadata through the life of the media. So that's
exactly. And as you said, you know, the media is the king, yeah, right? And the metadata is the queen, and we need to harness the power of our content, in particular at Al Jazeera. Ben, please, final thoughts.
Final thoughts. I think it's all pretty interesting. Everyone is all going to the same place pretty fast. But I mean, I still think it's all about telling the story. And I think all the new technology in the cloud is going to bring our viewers closer to the actual content creation at the same time, so that we're going to start creating content and getting immediate feedback from our audience, and being able to actually, modify the content to really give the end user, the viewer, the best experience they can possibly have. So it's getting closer and closer and closer.
David, is it all just about removing mundane tasks?
No, I don't think so at all. I mean, that's part of the story, of course. I think, the cloud itself is a buzzword, right? It's as much as anything else. But I think the way we want to think about the cloud is it's about letting creative people be more creative wherever they are, with whatever technology they have in their hands, and collaborate with as many people as possible to make that better story. So it's all about increasing the velocity of creating amazing creative content. And it's all about the creators at the end of the day.
Thank you. I'd like to thank you all for coming along today, especially those of you who've traveled long distances. And thanks to there's a question. Do we have time for a question? Well, no one's here to say no. Do we have time for a question? Okay, quick question then. One question. You can ask one, right?
Hello, my name is Mohammed bin Othman. I'm a senior designer. I work for Jazeera Media Network. My manager is Ramzan. Okay, thank you Adobe for adding the Arabic language finally to After Effects. Thank you for adding the motion graphic template. That makes it need to be better. I want to ask about regarding the virtual reality. Are you planning to, since TV is going to internet now, are you planning to make something virtual reality to add like editing from the mobile, like Huawei or something? What else? For the metadata, we don't want to use anymore putting the keyword. Is there something like face recognition, something like that? In the future, we are talking 2030. That's it.
So,
thank you so much.
Should I go? So for the virtual reality, most of the virtual reality footage that's cut around the world right now is cut in Premiere Pro. We added technology about even a year ago now, I believe, to actually be able to edit within the 360 and actually pan around while you're doing your editorial, including placing graphics and text within the virtual reality in both Premiere and After Effects. And we've actually done something even more exciting in the last release, which is when you're going to be creating a virtual reality scene, it's not okay to look at it in a non-virtual sense. So we now allow you to edit your virtual reality video in Premiere Pro inside the camera itself. So you can go inside the headset and get controls so that you're actually placing the Premiere experience inside the camera so that you're staying within the virtual experience as you're editing around. And I think it's just another output, right? Creativity is about creating the content and the story you want to tell, and then creating the services you want to tell it on. So it's just, for us, it's another first-class citizen of where you want your content to be able to show up.
I'm afraid we do all need to go back to the main hall for final words, but we can take this conversation offline if David has a little bit longer time after the session. So thanks all for coming along. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Ramzan.